Gentlemen, you're very welcome back to the Iron Mindset podcast. We've got Cillian O'Connor, Dysfunctional Patterns, and Tristan Jacobs, TJ Pain Free. Very excited. Obviously, we tried to do this last week, and due to unforeseen circumstances, we couldn't. So I'm excited now we actually do get a chance to have you both on. The evidence-based dark web trifecta. Between the three of us, we're going to have, I think we can approach this from some really interesting points with Cillian's S&C background, Tristan dealing more people in the pain therapy realm. So, gentlemen, you're both very, very welcome back.
Thanks for having us.
What I want to ask is, you guys have actually been working together over the last couple of weeks and months. I know Cillian encountered some issues in training and Tristan's been giving him a dig out. What happened? What brought you to that conclusion?
I got, obviously from chatting to Tristan, it wasn't entirely clear exactly what it was in terms of, like, I thought it might be the back, and I suppose it doesn't really matter exactly what it was. It just stopped me from training. So basically I was getting some back issues for a while, not like really bad pain, but just kind of like achiness. And then there was 1 week where I did some heavy deadlifts that were probably a little bit too heavy. And then I went on a run as well. And just came back from the run one day and went to have a shower and was reaching down to pick up like a shampoo bottle and felt like this kind of sharp sort of stabbing pain in the side of my lower back. And it was the only time I'd ever gotten anything like that before. Like, I'm very lucky in that I've been training for like 15 years. I'd never gotten like a back injury before. But it was pretty significant in terms of, like, couldn't bend down to pick up even like a 5 kilo plate without my back seizing up. Tried to manage it for a good while by myself, like maybe a month or two, was just trying to like reduce the training weights. And then eventually it kind of got to a point where I realized I needed to kind of go to somebody who definitely had a lot more expertise in the area, because I did one training session. You probably remember I got onto you right after I started getting this numbness in my foot. And once nerve stuff starts coming into the scenario, I'm like, okay, not fucking around with this anymore. You know, I've tried doing it myself, knowing all the principles that I know. I want to get on to somebody who's based in Ireland, who I've seen knows his stuff. Funny enough, it turned out that he wasn't in Dublin, though. He was in Galway. So regardless, I said, okay, let's set up doing it online. So yeah, that was, I think that was just before Christmas, maybe?
Yeah, thereabouts, yeah.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's a great thing to be able to do, because for guys like us, you know, you're a coach, you're dealing with people all the time, you're usually the problem solver.
Yeah.
But having that ability to reach out to somebody and be able to say, can I just put all this on you and have you start to help me with this issue? So Tristan, then when Cillian reached out, what's that screening process like? How did it go? Like, what was it? Because naturally, I'd imagine it's somewhat different dealing with a coach who has a working knowledge versus, say, somebody who's like, this hurts and I don't know what's going on, please help. What was it like working with Cillian initially? How did this relationship start? And what was the protocol then going forward for his treatment?
It started, I suppose, as he contacted me. And like, the thing is with working with coaches and stuff, it has its pros and its cons. The pros is they're aware of their body and they generally are fairly easy to guide into executing a certain movement. But then the other side of it is they're also aware of their body. So then it becomes like, well, I think it's sometimes now, in fairness, Cillian, he didn't say this, but it does happen where, I think it's this and I think it's that. It's like, well, let me worry about that. Just give me the symptoms in the background. So we had a Zoom call and I got him to do a couple things on the video and just see what he noticed, what he felt and stuff. The biggest thing with Cillian at the moment is extension is the thing that really triggers it. And extension is the thing that he is very conscious of. So what we've tried, like in the interim, is using as a test, even though it's not number one priority, is running, because we know that is always has been a trigger since it's happened. Okay. So like that, what we did after a few weeks is we chanced a small run and the symptoms did appear. So we know that that's a baseline, what we'll work with. So we've worked on a variety of different things. We've changed up the block every sort of 4 weeks to explore what he can and can't do, what he feels comfortable with doing, because there's no point giving him stuff that he's firstly not comfortable doing, secondly causes too much aggravation, and that obviously causes a fear of what's going to happen next. So like that, we have now where we have lying on the stomach and doing some back extensions. Again, just lift off the ground. Don't try and go as high as you can. Let's just see what happens. And what I'd said to him on the last block is like, what do you want to keep in? What do you want to, what are you still apprehensive of? And we can sometimes supplement a movement that that's relatively close to the thing you're afraid of, but doesn't have the same stigma. So like he had suggested Zercher squats, which at the time I thought that'll be interesting because the load in that area is probably going to be somewhat taxing. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And in fairness, it didn't really spark anything. Now he has in the last 2 weeks, or we say, that you started noticing a little bit in the foot. Would it be the last 2 weeks maybe?
Yeah. It hasn't gotten any worse. It just kind of hangs around.
So then what, in this case, is we look at this block and go, what do we do differently to last block? What could it have been that was... It's just not, not as straightforward as, and unfortunately not all cases are. It's not just like, I'm sure there's someone out there that would go killing like that, bang, and it'd be done in a minute.
Yeah.
But in this case, it just isn't. There's a lot more to it. And we're trying to, in fairness, we've done a variety of movements. So it's great that he has the ability to still do a lot of stuff. But we do want to get him back to a point of not being too cautious of a deadlift, of an RDL, anything that's going to involve a bit of extension or flexion to someone. Like Jefferson curls, he's progressed non-stop.
It does feel great. I love doing those.
He's loading them, no bother at all. So it's still the opposite movement. And it's just trying to get the point where he can push load through while keeping himself low. Because if he gets the point where it starts to spike too much, it can step you back a bit. He goes, oh shit, it's fucking back with this. And then training becomes a bit like, oh God, I wonder what I'll feel like tomorrow. So it's a work in progress. He's definitely doing more now than he was. And I think he's definitely getting more confidence in the loads of some of the movements. But we're still not at the point where, like, I think we did suggest that at the end of this month, we'll chance another small run just to see. But again, I'm conscious of taking 2 steps forward and 2 steps back at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's that, isn't it? It's like, you have to kind of decide what the list of priorities are in terms of what do we definitely, so obviously for you, Cillian, running is probably a priority. It's something you want to be able to do. So lifting and running, a multidisciplined athlete, which I'd imagine is a unique experience for you, where you primarily deal with a lot of powerlifters now. So here's a guy, you're like, oh, he does actual training. He's an actual athlete. He does a lot of things.
He doesn't just stand on the spot.
Exactly. So it's interesting. It's different. It's dynamic. Although I will say, have you posted videos of you doing Jefferson curls?
Oh yeah,
yes, yeah.
How do people respond to those? I suppose like in social media, we're in like a vacuum where people kind of know the buzz. Like flexion's fine, it can be quite beneficial, but it's one of those things. I think it can like be so triggering to like the general group thinking the greater fitness realm, where everyone's still told by their Reps Ireland iTech course that flexion is in any way is bad. So I'd always be like, has there been any like, why are you doing those?
No, I get people asking me about the Zercher squats, like where they're just kind of curious, like why would you hold a bar like that? But I think you're right that like I am in such a little vacuum or like my own little bubble that I think just the people who follow me, like they know what a Jefferson curl is, or they at least know like the overall premise that like rounding your back isn't going to make it explode. If I train in like I do some of my training in a different gym. That's just like a public gym. And I can definitely see the looks from the corner of the room where people are like, does that guy realize that he's going to just disintegrate his spine by doing that? But no, I think like it'd be different if I was putting up very different content that had, a different kind of following. And then through, Jefferson curls in the mix, people would be like, what? But
what the fuck is this guy doing?
Yeah.
Don't you know you're going to die? Like,
but one
5 reasons you shouldn't go into flexion.
One thing that it has, the experience of working with TJ has made me think about, and I kind of already knew this, is like just how different somebody's experience of the rehab process could be if you did work with somebody who wasn't great. Because like he was saying, extension is the main thing that causes me issues. So like I'm imagining if I had gone to somebody who is totally against flexion and it's all about neutral spine, how I could just be in this like horrendous cycle of somebody saying you should be working on neutral spine everything. Let's try to get you extending more. You hurt your back because you're rounding it, and it's actually just flaring my symptoms even more. Yeah. How frustrating that would be. Whereas being able to work with someone who's able to identify, like, this movement doesn't seem to cause you issues. Let's do more of that. Let's work on eventually getting towards the extension thing. You could just have a really rough go of it if you went to somebody who didn't know their stuff.
I think that was actually going to be something I wanted to ask. And I think it's one of the things we kind of have. I was saying when we were having our coffee beforehand, I feel somewhat blessed in a way to have someone like Tristan to refer to, because I know this was a thing for me for a while. When I was training many years ago, I had attended a physio, and it was all that, you keep your back straight, when you're in training, maybe take a couple of weeks off the gym. It's like, fuck's sake. You get caught in this cycle of, I'm going and paying somebody money to give me some like really like basic exercises to make me feel a little better, but also taking me away from the task that I want to engage in. Whereas when Tristan kind of came to more prominence over the last couple of years, I think it's the mission statement is almost, I want to get you back to the activity that you were doing before until you encountered this pain experience, because this activity also it adds quality to your life. It's something you want to do, you enjoy doing. For I don't know why that would be running, Cillian. But in any case,
what is wrong with me?
I still maintain running as psychopaths, but that's my own.
But that's what I'm trying to say, and I'd imagine that was like a relief for you. Here's somebody who's trying to get you back to the activities you enjoy. And you know, it's it's the ability to be able to dip the toe, test the water. Let's see what we can get away with here. Well, let's see what causes the pain, what we can load without pain. And I think that's it stands to Tristan's intent with how he works with people. And I've found that as well. Every time I've referred to Tristan, I've always found that the lifter comes back in a much better understanding and mental position and a bit more mental fortitude around the pain experience and what they can expect in training, and that, you know, pain sometimes happens and we will combat it, as you guys are. I'd imagine you're in a much better place physically and mentally than you were maybe just before Christmas when you started working together.
Yeah. And the big thing, I mean, you could probably speak to this as well. Like the hardest thing I find about rehabbing an injury like I have, especially a back, this is a weird injury in that, like, it doesn't. One of the reasons that I wanted to get on to Tristan was because it was the first time I'd ever encountered something where I wasn't getting immediate feedback about what was causing issues. So I would do a training session that would feel fine, and then like the evening of the next day, I would start getting numbness in my foot. And I'd be like, okay, that's really weird. And you're almost kind of wondering, was it the training session? Was it something like, did I sleep weird or something like that? And I think the hardest part for people, if they're trying to rehab stuff by themselves, is just like trying to keep in perspective where you are now versus where you used to be. So even though it's frustrating that, like, I still get a little bit of numbness in my foot and get the odd bit of pain in the back, if I compare it to where I was at when I first got in contact with you, like, I haven't had a day like that in a long time. So like my version of a bad day with my back is way better now than it was 2 or 3 months ago, and I'm lifting more weight than I was, and I have, you know, more access to more movements with my back than I used to have. And I think it's very hard to reassure yourself of that if you're just doing it by yourself. Whereas if you have somebody else who's like confirming that and saying, look, you know, it's not going to be this perfect linear process. There are going to be up and down days.
Yeah. And it kind of ties into what I wanted to actually ask you. You're a coach. You deal with dozens of people, primarily general public, bringing them from their first steps into the gym to getting competent and comfortable with barbells, with all these other implements, making people pretty strong, pretty fit. It's slightly different from like the most coaches I've had on previously be primarily powerlifting. So it's great to have somebody that has that bigger scope. But for you as a coach, how was it to be in the client side of the relationship? So you were obviously like trusting a lot in Tristan's abilities. Was that a difficult thing to be able to fully put your dependence on somebody else being the person that's usually the authority? And have you learned anything from that experience since?
I wouldn't say that it was it was actually relieving, I think, because I don't have to second guess. Like I trust everything that he's doing, but there's also that aspect of me being like, you know, if it doesn't work, at least I can say that I followed the plan and I didn't dick around with like changing thing every second week because I'm like, oh, Zercher squats aren't working, so I'm going to go do this thing instead. You know, it's nice that I'm able to just have myself committed to a process of like, you know, we put a block together and we're like, we're going to try this and see how it goes. And then we can reevaluate it at the end and you have somebody to be accountable to. No, I think it's been really good and really beneficial in that, like, it's kind of, I suppose it's like hit home to me how the main thing that we do as coaches that's valuable is provide that accountability and direction to people. Because, you know, not to take away in any way from how knowledgeable Tristan is, there's not a huge amount there that would have been like counterintuitive to me. Like, okay, we're going to reduce the weight on stuff that's causing you aggravation or move to a different exercise. That stuff I all know. But it's like, will I actually put that into practice when it's, you know, a Tuesday and I'm frustrated that a year ago I was deadlifting 100 kilos more than I am now? For sure. You know?
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the bigger picture thing when you're working with somebody you can trust, it's probably something that you've probably dealt with this as well, Tristan. I'm sure you've dealt with a Cillian when you're dealing with clients or athletes. The process and how successful it is hinges on the trust between the athlete or client and the person providing the guidance. Like, so Tristan, let me ask, I assume Cillian has been quite adherent to the process and that's why he's seeing the improvements that he is.
100%. Like, as I say to people, is like, I can only give you tools.
Yeah.
And as I say, whether you use them or not, that's sort of your prerogative. The thing with Cillian is it's very sort of hands off because like he doesn't need to be babied. Like, he just does it.
Yeah.
Like, whereas some people I've seen need their hand held and they need to text you every 5 minutes, and look, those people exist and that's fine. But it's also comforting knowing you don't have to check on him every hour, that he isn't going to have a fucking meltdown. And if he has a problem, he'll message you.
Yeah.
Do you know, that kind of way? So it's always knowing if I haven't heard from him, it's generally probably a good thing.
Yeah.
And then, so what generally happens is he probably goes a week, 10 days maybe, and then gives me voice notice of what's transpired. And sometimes it's a case of, okay, well, nothing's really gone wrong. Let's maybe just progress the load that we're currently using and what we're doing. Or like the other day, yesterday or the day before, I sent him on something I was trying to try and just see what the sensation feels like afterwards. Just try a few little things, and that might give you an idea as to what we do next. Can we kind of advance things a bit more? Can we start really pushing into that, oh God, here comes extension moment, and see what happens? Because like the thing is, and it's going back to people telling you to just rest and do nothing or be mindful of this, is you're not really gonna, like, if I get Cillian to now go and do 3 sets of 6 deadlifts, he's unlikely going to cause an injury.
Yeah.
Like, yes, his symptoms might be aggravated, but at least we know that will subside again. But at least we know where we stand. And like, I had on the way up here, I had a phone call with a strongman in the UK, and he was saying to me, Joe, he's done rehab blocks with this particular lat issue he has, and he feels great after rehab blocks, but then in a couple of weeks it's back again. I was like, so during the rehab blocks, did you take out your squats and your yoke walks? He said, well, some of them yes, and some of them would just reduce the load drastically. Okay, so you basically took out the aggravating factor and did a load of other shit, and then when you came back and went up to those aggravating loads again, the problem, so it's because you weren't doing the thing that hurts. So you had no way of monitoring, you have no metric. You can try all these things in the world, but unless you're still monitoring the thing that hurts, what other way have you got to measure your progress?
Yeah,
do you know?
For sure, yeah. I suppose that the thing I kind of want to ask on that is, I think one of the benefits you would have is being able to, zoom out and see like that with that UK-based strongman. You can say, well, look, you had a reduction in load here. You weren't loading this pattern as often, and you were doing the rehab work, and you saw a benefit. And then obviously dropped the rehab work, went back into the previous loading pattern, and it resulted in the return of the pain. Whereas I suppose one of the benefits to working with somebody like Cillian, who has a fantastic base of knowledge himself and applicable knowledge as well, because he works with people, I'm sure he's helped people manage pain as well. So that I want to ask you a question. So before we came in, I threw up a question box on Instagram during the week when I knew we were going to have a bit more time to prep for this one. And I got some pretty interesting questions. And one in particular, I think you can both answer, but I definitely want to get Tristan's take on this first. So this came in from Adam Phillips, one of the previous guests and one of the head coach of Odyssey Strength. And he was asking how you go about managing the average person that comes in. So somebody's not like Cillian. Cillian's clued in. He knows the crack. He knows you're moving with best intention. But somebody comes in with some old school beliefs they've been grandfathered into, like eggs are bad for you, if your back bends, you're going to hurt your back. Mind your back when you're doing all that lifting in the gym, that can't be good for you. Go out for a walk, if you want to, this sort of thing. People that use that, and even down to, for example, people experiencing a sore elbow and be like, yeah, I'm injured, or people have a pinched nerve, they use the language that they can't possibly actually self-diagnose in that way. How do you, in your field, go about managing the language they use and the presumptions they have about their symptoms versus what you actually know? How do you marry those two together? How do you bridge that gap?
To be honest, it's probably one of the most challenging aspects because getting someone to get into flexion to assess how they react when they've been told that is like lethal is very hard. So it's in a lot of the cases what I do is I regress a movement to the most basic of position with no load at all, and explain to them if I get someone to do a Jefferson curl, right, straight away they think of, holy shit, my back. If I get someone to lean back against a wall and move their feet away from it and just rub their body all the way down, They're doing spinal flexion, but they're not thinking about it because I have the task of, right, I want you to keep rubbing your leg, talk away from what you're actually getting them to do. And next one, you say, okay, can you see how you bent your back there? No problem. Okay, cool. So sometimes you just have to use a very basic, simplified, regressed version of something to show them that, look, did that hurt? No? Okay, cool. The problem we have with the language is it's very hard to say to someone, yeah, well, that's just not the case. Now, I've gotten to the point where I do often say that now, but the benefit in what I'm doing is almost all my work now is referred. So I'm fortunate where they've already been referred by someone, so therefore there's a trust element. Before they even get to talk to me, I have that trust element. So it's not that I can say whatever I want and they're going to believe me, but they're more inclined to be open-minded when I've worked with someone that they know and might be singing my praises or whatever the case is, versus someone that just Googled me.
For sure.
So I think I'm blessed in having that side of it. So I'm sure it can be a lot more challenging just coming up on a search somewhere and then you tell them to do this thing that they're absolutely petrified of doing. But sometimes I also use examples of people. So it sounds ironic, but even like last night when I was coming home from training, I had a call with a coach in the UK, and he was going on about this pec issue he has. And a previous physio he went to a few weeks ago said that she believed he had a tendon tear. This is something that happened 4 months ago. And I said, what made her come to this conclusion? Did you do exercises? Did you get an MRI? What sort? Oh no, she did this, that, next thing. And I was like, okay, does any overhead work hurt at all? He's like, no, I can press overhead. I was like, so if she says pec minor tendon is torn, like overhead is, you can't really get much more lengthened than that position. So if that tendon is torn and you put it into a lengthened position, now you load it, theoretically you're going to get symptoms. Like that would hurt. And he's like, nothing. He's like, oh, that, yeah, actually, Jesus, that makes sense. When you start like just simplifying it, like not saying they're wrong, but let me give you my opinion. If these attachment sites are lengthened and there's no pain, do you really think that there's a tear there? Do you know these kind of things? Well, so you have to kind of use logic sometimes too, but try dumb down the language a bit, because bullshit baffles brains. I can spiel the biggest load of shit to someone and they'll believe all of it, but it doesn't help anyone. So I say to people, like, I try and make things as simple. I talk to everyone, whether you're a coach or a general population person, I try and talk to you as simply as possible so there is no error in understanding. We're on the same page. I'm not going to use fancy words because I'm not talking to another person that might know these words and I don't see the value in them. If I say to you, like, I want you to bend your back, so, no, you can't misunderstand that. If I want you to go into spinal flexion, people are like, what does that mean? So just try and use as simple language you can. And it also takes the fear factor out when they understand what you're saying. If you use too big of words and people are like, I don't know what the fuck you're saying, and they're then too embarrassed to question it, they go off with the wrong idea and they potentially do the completely wrong thing. Or they Google something and come up with something completely different to what you asked. So it's about the language you use, trying to make it simple, not sound scary, and then explain, I had someone in a similar situation, maybe use another example. And sometimes I will make up an example. Like I didn't have the client, but I pretend I did, just so that they will then realize, okay, he's done it before. Like he's not, I'm not a guinea pig.
You're breaking the fourth wall. Don't tell them you're making this up.
But you know what I mean? Like you have to sometimes do that to people, you know?
Yeah.
Just to reduce that anxiety and that fear and then just not use the language I've been taught at all.
I think the language is a huge piece of the puzzle. I'll actually give you as a prime example. I've heard, back in the day when I worked in FlyFit, so I used to personal train at a FlyFit gym and sorts. I was on a platform opposite another trainer who was also coaching strength training, and he had a lifter doing deadlifts, and it was pretty heavy set, and the lifter came into some degree of flexion, right? But the way he phrased it and the word, trying to sound smart. So your back herniates when you do heavy sets of deadlifts. And I was like, what the fuck is this? What this? Like, why? Firstly, why even point it out? This is actually the same question. I want to take that to Cillian now in a second, just because I think Cillian and I probably deal with it from a different end of things, because we're still working with people on the gym floor very actively. I know you do work with people too, but just I'd imagine the bulk of your client base is people coming for a pain therapy, whereas where people are like, I'm fat, I don't want to be fat anymore, or I'm weak, I want to be strong. But I do also want to get into a little bit later red flags in providers, whether that be somebody who's a pain therapist, a physio, a fucking massage therapist, or a PT. So somebody that says your back is herniating when you lift, to me, is a massive red flag. This therapist that was helping this other person saying they had ruptured or torn a pec minor despite having no scans, massive red flag. Unless they have X-ray vision that I don't know about, I think that's a huge red flag.
But like goes just on that same language, like I talked to you about that lifter, Olivia, a young 16-year-old girl, and got an MRI for back pain, and it shows a mild disc bulge. Like if you look at the MRI, it's tiny. And the orthopedic said to her that her back, if she keeps doing what doing, her back is going to explode, and that it's a ticking time bomb.
Amazing.
Do you know, like, no, I don't care who you are, that language is not acceptable, especially, and this isn't to be any way derogatory, but a 16-year-old female is probably slightly emotional, hormonal. She's a very good lifter. Lifting is what she loves to do. She lifts 5 days a week because you can't make her train less. And you've just literally, she's about to go to junior worlds, junior nationals, and you just sucked it out of her by a couple words.
Yeah.
And then it becomes myself and her coach then just trying to like calm her down and go, well, no, that's bullshit. We'll have you back.
This is, I suppose, the bigger thing to speak to there is, one, this is obviously an activity that means an awful lot to this person, not only to any particular person, but 16-year-olds still in school. You know, anyone that is an adult is an authority figure, and you've just had an authority
100%.
figure tell you you can't do the thing you enjoy anymore, or you're going to be dealing with lifelong ramifications, which is disastrous, particularly at that phase in your life when your scope of understanding would be obviously just due to lack of experience, somewhat more limited. So very irresponsible use of language.
And that's why I say to people, like, my number one aim is to get you back doing the thing that you want to do.
Yes.
Do you know, because that is, people don't realize the psychological effect of not being able to do the thing you love has on you. Don't mind the physical. The physical is actually the easy part. The psychological is the hard part. And the longer you go without it, the harder it is to get back to it.
Yes.
And being told that you're fragile as well.
Oh, stop.
Yeah.
Like,
Just
you know.
not acceptable now.
no.
So I want to spin that same question towards you, Cillian, about the language we use in training, how we reconcile what somebody comes in believing off the street. Particularly for us, we probably encountered a good bit as well. Like I'll give you an example that I would encounter if I have somebody doing deadlifts for the first time, and I say, you know, I'm feeling that in my back.
Yeah.
So I always say, I'll go, good, excellent. There's a shitload of muscles there that we want to make really, really strong. The deadlift's a great way to train them. Like, what have you encountered? What are some of the bridges you have to cross with people? Is there any common trends that come up?
Yeah, well, I suppose to keep it on the same track there of what we were talking about, I think with this stuff, it comes down to understanding who the person is, how much, like, you kind of have to earn people's trust, like he was saying about, like, were they referred to you, or is this just a brand new person? And, you know, if it's someone who's brand new, you probably have to earn their trust. Particularly, I find people who are a little bit older, like, say the boomer generation, not to be derogatory or whatever.
It's just such a meme now.
Yeah.
Like a boomer.
But, like, they don't have this gym culture that we've grown up with. And so there tends to be a huge amount of hesitation around certainly anything that's like loading your back or whatever. So you kind of have to figure out, like, how much do they trust me? And also, I think a bigger part as well, which was definitely a skill that I had to develop, is trying to figure out, is this belief that they have, even though it might be inaccurate, is it worth challenging right now? Like, is it something that is actually going to directly harm their ability to get results and start training regularly? So, like, to give you an example, I got a guy a while ago who would be a little bit older and had never done any strength training before, had never set foot in a gym. And he had experienced issues with back pain, specifically sciatica before. And, you know, like, very, very, very weak. Like, wouldn't have been able to pick up like an 8-kilo kettlebell off the floor with his whole body hunching over. And I remember on the first day, I tried to get him just to do a very light Jefferson curl, just because I was thinking, okay, we're going to start trying to, like, restore a little bit of confidence in your back. And he was just like, no, well, I'm not doing that. Like, that's just not an option. And it was one of those moments where I had to kind of stop and be like, okay, we're at a crossroads here. Am I going to fight him on this? Or, like, is this something that I really need to push back on? I decided not to. I decided, okay, look, we're going to do it with, you know, a flatter back position. We'll get you stronger with that. And, you know, maybe further down the line, if that's something that you want to explore, that we can. It's 4 or 5 months on now. Now he's able to do like 50 kilos for 5 reps off the floor with the trap bar. He's able to do, you know, goblet squats with 12 or 15 kilos, and he would have started with like bodyweight squats to a bench. And he hasn't had any sciatica symptoms since then, you know. And I got him there without having to push him on that that belief that he wasn't comfortable with being challenged on just yet, or the trust wasn't built there yet.
I'd imagine now I'm sure he's seen a fantastic amount of benefit in those 5 months.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine his trust for you now and your judgment calls is much greater. And part of it might be because you didn't push the agenda of we're doing fucking Jefferson curls.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it is this really, like you said, is this the hill we want to die on?
Yeah.
Is this really the thing we want to challenge? I've mentioned it before on a podcast. I had a lifter come to me and they were like, I don't want a client come to me, I don't want a deadlift. And they were really, you could see the walls go up. I've had other trainers make me deadlift. I was like, yeah, cool, we just want deadlift. And I almost couldn't believe that they didn't have to deadlift.
Yep.
And then weeks later, it's like, can you actually show me how to deadlift? Because we, like you just said, that trust had been built. And I think it's like TJ does, it's keeping the bigger picture in mind. For you, it was like, look, this guy's never trained.
Yep.
I'm just going to get him moving around. I'm going to try restore some confidence in his movement, in his body, in his back, in his ability to actually do things. I'd imagine the quality you've added to his life is exponential.
This is it, because like even if deadlifts or even if lower body training was off the table as far as he was concerned, he's never done anything before. So even if he was coming in and doing bench press and rows for 20 minutes a couple times a week and leaving, it still had a radical effect on his health in the broader scheme of things, you know? So I think, and don't get me wrong, if you go back like 10 years ago and I was in that situation, I probably wouldn't have taken that approach. I probably would have been dogmatic. You have to do this. Like, I'll never forget, like, one of the first PT clients I ever got was a guy who was kind of like in his 60s. And, you know, I was just, you know, absolutist about, I have to get this guy doing a barbell back squat. And I remember one of the guys who was working at the gym with me, who had a bit more experience at the time, was being like, do you really, like, he's not comfortable with that. Do you really think that he needs to do that? Do you not think he could probably get a very similar effect by just doing some bodyweight squats to a box? Like, that'd probably be challenging for 10 reps. In my mind, it was like, no, it has to be a barbell, you know? And I think that's a big shift that's happened in the way that I approach coaching now is like, what are the things that we definitely have to do? And what are the things that we could maybe come around to at some point? Maybe I think they might be slightly more optimal or whatever, but like, as long as we get you moving in the right direction, that's the main thing.
I think it's like, it represents maturity as a coach or helping people. It's that it's what your athlete or client or patient can and can't do is not an extension of your ego. And I think that's a thing we oftentimes do. I was in the same boat as you when I started. I was fucking ironing, baby. You know what I mean? Everyone's going to train with a fucking bar. Like, don't get me wrong. I think barbells are great. They're very handy. You can do everything with them. So if somebody's stuck for time, you have a bar, you can do 4 exercises and get the fuck out. It's great. But does everybody have to? Of course not. And I think it just represents, as time passes, I think as you see yourself, you can validate to yourself and to others, I can do this no matter what the limitations are of this person. I don't need to jam this square peg into this circle hole. I'm adaptive in my approach, and ultimately my intent is I want to put your best interests. I have your best interests at heart, and I want to put the best foot forward to help you get there, whatever your starting point is. I totally relate to that. But I think it's representative of, as time passes, things change, both for us as athletes and for fitness as a whole. So one of the things I want to ask you about is, both you guys have been lifting for a long time. You've also both been involved in training for a good long time. Even if we only think over the past 5 years, there were trends when we entered fitness versus trends that are popular now. So I don't know if you guys have Threads, but I have a Threads account. And I put up a post about one of my pet peeves now is there's really this like 5 mistakes you're making in the gym that are costing you your gains. It's like, man, we're just trying to get people in the fucking door. Who cares if you're doing fucking kickbacks with a fucking dumbbell? Yeah, is it the most effective exercise for your triceps? Maybe not. But it's a lot more effective than sitting home on the couch doing fucking nothing. And I think this is like this pit that trainers can fall into, this vacuum of, I am going to create a hierarchy of what you're doing is bad and this is good, when the reality is, I think we're all better off proceeding from the place of, if you go to the gym and do anything, you're already much further along than sitting home on the couch watching fucking Netflix or Pornhub or whatever the fuck you're into. You're much better off coming in, walking on a treadmill for 60 minutes and going home than if you did nothing. Because if I can get you in the door, we can do a lot more once you're there and you're comfortable going to this place than if I say, actually, you've come in here, you've tried to make an effort, and guess what? You've been fucking it up since day one. You better hire me. I think it's like the charlatan playbook. Here's a problem you didn't know you have, and I actually sell the solution to this problem.
No way.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's kind of one trend that I see has kind of come around the last while. Like it's probably always been present, but I think it's like in the day and age of captions being blown up on the screen of like, here's, X number of mistakes you're making. Are you doing this? That's terrible. Do this instead. It's like, man, just get people in the door. Let's remove barriers to participation, not bring more in. So Tristan, have you noticed anything for yourself? Is there anything that sticks out to you as there was something that, maybe was present a couple of years ago, and then times have changed and shifted, and now this is like the new thing, good or bad? It doesn't necessarily have to be shit.
In terms of the stuff I do, I think it's the stuff that, as you've just mentioned, it's that these exercises are bad for you. I saw a reel recently by a guy that had a girl squatting and saying that she's literally crushing her thoracic spine. And I was like, if that's the case, how are people squatting 300 or 400 kgs and they're not crumbling and they're not in a wheelchair? Things like it's becoming more and more popular again, is like myofascial release and how we're releasing tissue and fascia. I'm like, geez, that must be awful for likes of Jake Brennan when he puts 400 kg on his back, how his fascia just all restructures itself. And then another thing that's popped up, and someone actually asked me this question about, is breathing. It's become this sort of, I don't know, it's like a trend. Like, I understand people breathing like when they get into an ice tub, learning to control the breathing and not hyperventilate and panic. I understand that when people are having panic attacks or feeling highly stressed, calming down, slowing down your breathing, slows down your heart rate, all that kind of good stuff. But it's your breathing is not the reason you're in pain. Your breathing is not the reason you can't hit squat depth. Your breathing isn't the reason your hips hurt when you squat. So the thing is that people like something that's sort of spicy and saucy and potentially a quick fix and an easy fix. Telling someone that you have to pull back a bit of intensity because you don't sleep for shit, you don't consume enough calories, you don't hydrate enough, that stuff isn't pretty. That stuff doesn't sell. But my program teaching you how to breathe in 5 easy steps would sell much better than, why don't you just reduce the load on the bar a little bit? Yeah, but that affects my ego. But I can't deal with that. Like, so things like that is that this whole pain thing is like, well, this is why you're in pain. It's like, yeah, but people then forget about the big picture. Like, as I say, like everyone's gonna have pain at some point. If you train and into any way of an intense level, you're going to experience pain at some point. That is not an injury, that's pain. So don't look at your injury per hour, because that's completely different. That's a debilitating situation.
Yeah.
But pain experienced is going to be by every single person in this world. And the harder you push yourself, probably the more likelihood you're going to experience pain at some point. Doesn't mean it's a problem. It's life. Fucking deal with it. But the simple things everyone can do is, reduce intensity a little bit. Are you sleeping sufficiently? Hydration. The recovery is the thing. You can only train as hard as you can recover. And no magic breathing or magic stretch or magic fucking footwork program is going to solve your problem if all the controllable variables are out of whack. So it's the boring stuff is the stuff that works.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sell. That's
not
problem.
sexy, yeah.
It's not revenue.
Yeah. Cillian, you actually mentioned this when we were having our coffees before, and we were having the pre-game about, everyone wants to believe in the magic bullet, the trump card, the thing that you can just whip out of nowhere, and this is the reason you haven't been making progress. In your time in training, have you noticed these trends shift and change, or has there been an ever-present one?
Well, the ever-present thing is that they're all doing the same thing that you spoke about there, that like it comes dressed up in different packaging, but they're essentially all talking about magic bullet. This is the one thing that you're not doing that's going to fix everything. In terms of like, I think stuff comes around in trend or in cycles more than people realize, and that like, like even the diets, like I think intermittent fasting is kind of popular again now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I think keto is still kind of popular. Like, I'm awful for just unfollowing pages that are spewing shite, so I actually don't have a great idea of what's like at the cutting edge of bullshit at the moment. But like all of that stuff has been around to some degree, and then I think just what happens is that because the average person is only in the fitness sort of sphere and engaging with it for maybe like 2 or 3 years or something, a new generation of people come in and then they see this stuff being presented and they think that it's brand new concepts that have never been done before. So I think probably the bigger thing is just like trying to get people to realize that like these aren't totally unique, different things that you're seeing. They're all doing the same thing, which is telling you this is, you know, a special, unique problem. This is a unique solution and it's going to fix it all for you.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about when we were having coffee that like the book Anti-Fragile, I really recommend people read. And there's this thing in there called, he uses this term called domain dependency, which is like, as humans, our proclivity to learn a concept in one environment and really struggle to apply it in another one. And I see that a lot with like, I'll put up posts on Instagram talking about this kind of like magic bullet thing and people will be like, yeah, I really agree with that. And the same person will send me a message being like, what do you think about this thing?
Yeah.
And it might be like, I don't know, breathing to release your fascia so that that'll fix your back pain or something. I'm like, well, did you not, you know, the post that I put up about like this guy is just like doing all that stuff that I was talking about. And it's like, oh yeah, but I thought this was different because, you know, this guy's really charismatic and this thing just whatever reason makes sense to me.
I think what's difficult for people to grasp with a lot of these training concepts, and as you said, Tristan, like a lot of the stuff we apply, even the principles of training, like, you know, whatever it's progressive overload or like fucking adaptation, it's not sexy. It doesn't sell. People are like, what can I do to have it now? What can I take to have it now? What new routine can I put in to have it now? Whether it's something like pain management or gains in the gym, it's like, what's the best protein source? What's going to get me the most muscle right now? Or what's going to relieve my pain right now? Is it a foam roller? Is it a massage gun? Is it a fucking cold plunge? Is it a lacrosse ball? Yeah. Is there something you're not telling me that I could pay you to tell me? What can I throw money at that gets me the thing now? I think that's one of the unique aspects of the field we're in, is that everything you get from it, you have to put work in now to see a payoff a very long way down the road. And I think more than ever, that's a thing a lot of people have a tough time accepting, you know. And in saying that, I do think, just because one of the other things it's going to come up as a question about like, what are some of the good things that are actually coming from fitness at the moment? Because it's very easy for us to go, you're all shit and you don't know what you're fucking talking about and you're all selling bollocks. There are some good things that have come out of it.
Yeah, of course.
But in all the ways, I think the visibility and all that is better. It is this thing of people have a tough time. You know, we live in the day and age of fucking having an Amazon app on your phone and something's outside your door the next day, you know, whereas this is, you got to show up to this building, you know, 3 times a week for an hour each time for the next 6 months. And you got to be like relatively diligent with your food for those 6 months to see a result here. People are like, well, fuck that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's a tricky sell. So it's very easy. Here's my 8-week ab blaster. And, you know, you put someone on 1,200 calories and you have them doing 6 sessions a week and they might actually get that result, but you haven't put anything in place for them to maintain that result after. And maybe you never sold them that and they're all consenting adults. So what can you do?
Yep.
But I suppose that's one of the tricky things. I think you put it perfectly, Cillian. The trends of fitness come in cycles. And it's almost like, I'm sure, I don't know if you know this thing about pro wrestling, and I was your pro wrestling fan. They have a rule that everything starts over again from 7 years. So like, you know, there'd be like a big faction, like the NWO, and then 7 years
Flair comes out of retirement again.
Exactly. Something can become the new thing again every 7 or so years because the fan base rolls forward. Yeah. And I think it's the same thing with fitness. We get new people, even on a surface level, like, yeah, you know what? I think this is the summer I'm going to get a 6-pack, or I'm going to take my training serious, or whatever it might be. So I think that's like an interesting thing to recognize that, when I started training seriously, keto was a big thing, intermittent fasting was a big thing. And then I think for a while, it was like trainers being like, you just need to take your fucking training more seriously. You need to have some discipline. You need to stop being such a fat fuck. And then like 2 years after that, it was like, people that speak to you that way are not correct. You need to find a way to make fitness part of your life. And, you know, if you went out and binged 6 kebabs on the weekend, that's okay. Yeah. It's all about balance, you know? And it goes in these cycles. Because again, we're coming back around now to, let's not eat carbs. Let's actually only eat in 2-hour windows. Let's, I'm seeing now again, a lot of people posting about it. Back when I started, right, people sold muscle imbalances as you've a muscle virus. So you've got this imbalance between two sides. These are muscle viruses. It's something that's going to like cause you problems down the road if you don't solve it now. Whereas now that's come back around where it's like, these asymmetries mean this, and one leg is longer than the other and things like that. There's Tristan, I can see the look, you're like, fuck my life. I've dealt with this so much. So it's really interesting to see those cycles come around. So I think we will get into some of the red flags you might see. We'll use it and kind of like keep it into whether it's things we hear on the gym floor or things we see on Instagram, because that's probably going to be the most relevant to people listening. But let me ask, what are some good things you've seen coming out of fitness over the last couple of years, or training, or what trend has changed over the last while that you would say has been a positive?
I'll give you one thing that I'm going to say as a positive, but I'm sure people think negative, is sort of correcting sort of misguided information. And what I mean by that is to stop people wasting their money on something that isn't going to solve their problem. So a lot of people will have a personal belief or a bias to their practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're someone that believes that when you massage someone, you're releasing fascia, and someone says, well, actually we've proven that can't be done, you're probably going to take offense, because that's your revenue stream. That's what you sell. So I think the way it's done is crucial, that it isn't coming across as, well, Aaron Ian is just the biggest wanker and talks because they're shite, right?
It's all true though.
Well, that's the problem with that one. Bad example. But it's bad saying, well, look, we know that if you want to use a massage gun, you feel good afterwards, that's fine.
Yeah.
But just bear in mind, it isn't releasing fascia. It isn't undoing knots. It's not doing all these things. But again, if you feel good doing it, it's not causing any harm.
Mm-hmm.
So fire away, but don't buy it because someone told you it's going to release fascia, because that's not what it's going to do. So I think that is a good way. Once it's spun like that, look, like I say, and I've changed, I've gotten a bit softer as gone on, and be like, look, if you want to do all these things, do them. That's fine. That's not going to cause a problem. My issue with that kind of stuff is, again, it's like, if you buy this, it vibrates at fucking 10 fucking whatever per second. It's much better than this one. And it's like, well, they all do the fucking same thing.
Yeah.
If you feel good afterwards, happy days, use it. But don't go spend 150 quid on something because it got sold to you with a load of bullshit. So I think correcting misinformation is a good thing that's come around, provided it's not done in a sort of defamation situation.
You're not trying to slander the
respectfully,
practitioner.
yeah. Don't try not use names and stuff, but just say, look, this is the study, this is what it shows. But again, if you feel good, happy days, work away.
Yeah.
Do it because you want to, not because you were told to.
I would agree with that sentiment completely. And frankly, I think for a lot of these things, whether it's massage gun, whatever it might be, whatever it might be that the person enjoys, I don't think you need to rationalize, well, it's actually helping my recovery and it's releasing, it's breaking up knots in my muscles.
Yeah.
You don't need to sell it as a pile of bullshit.
Yeah.
Massages feel nice. You don't need to fucking, like, listen, man. We could all be told, listen, do you know, actually, if you have like sex every week for a year, it actually adds 10 years to your life. Listen, I don't need any more justification to know that it's good. You know what I mean? You could tell me it takes time off my life and I'll still do it. You know what I mean? So this is kind of the point. It's one of those things that you don't need to sell somebody bullshit reasons for a thing you enjoy to be enjoyable.
And like I say to people, I have people that come to me literally every 3 weeks or 4 weeks for massage because they love the way it feels.
Yeah.
I'm not using it to treat any problems. They love how they feel afterwards, and that's absolutely fine. I'm not causing a problem.
Yeah.
My biggest thing is I don't care what you do, provided it's not causing a negative effect, and you don't become psychologically attached or require that if you don't do it, you're going to feel like X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, so just so everybody knows, there is actually a price you can pay to have Tristan rub your body down for you. That's what I'm taking away from
With
that.
oil.
With oil.
Of your choice.
And then, Cillian, then for yourself as well, is there any particular, like, highlights, any good things you've seen coming through with health and fitness in the last while?
Well, I think the big it's funny because the problem with health and fitness at the moment, I think, is social media, but that's also the positive.
Yeah.
Because like we're not sitting here in this room if it isn't for Instagram.
For sure.
And the great thing about social media is that it's made the world smaller. And
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm only sitting here for the camera, not Instagram.
yeah, fair. But you know, I remember when I was first kind of getting exposed to the whole movement optimism thing and load management and stuff like that, it kind of felt like a little bit lonely in the sense that, like, Jesus, is there many people out there that are actually operating in the same kind of mindset with this stuff? And then as you kind of start to find more pages on Instagram, particularly, like, I think the meme pages are great in that, like, they bring a lot of people together and you see people sharing stuff. And I think the big positive of it is that it's easier now to get access to good information. Granted, it's easier to get access to bad information, but like, it's great that with Tristan, I know a guy who's based in Ireland now
Yeah.
that I can refer clients to. Whereas beforehand, I might have been under the impression that, like, you know, Greg Lehman would have been the first person that I had encountered. He's probably a super busy guy who operates out of Canada. Like, it's just finding more and more people who are putting out good information and just being able to connect with them and bounce ideas back and forth. Because, like, if you were in the fitness industry 10 years ago in Ireland, and these concepts were out there for you to read, you'd go fucking mental just listening to, like, the average personal trainer and, say, a FlyFit or something like that, and you'd kind of be pulling your hair out. But I think that's the big thing. It is getting better, I think, in that I've definitely noticed that there's more people challenging these concepts now than I would have seen before. Yes, maybe there's also more people, like, promoting the concepts that we don't like, but there is also more people, like, trying to put out good information as well.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point.
People are coming around. That people are getting a bit smarter. They're starting to question more. And like, as you like, you should question everything, whether you agree with it or not. You should question it, because the more you understand, the more you can, I suppose, practically apply.
Yeah.
Do you know?
I think the one for me that this kind of stands out as, like, a very personal experience. When I first ever started attending the gym I trained in was Ben Dunn Jervis Street, which doesn't exist anymore. It's actually gone. And there were 2 squat racks. That was it, right? There was dozens of cardio pieces of equipment. There was a whole floor of machines, but upstairs towards the back wall, there was 2 squat racks, right? Now, like, the last time when I finished working in FlyFit, there was 22 places to squat.
Yeah, this is very true.
Yeah,
very true.
100%.
So there's a much greater uptake of training quite hard. Training, like, you know, people don't just think training is go in, walk on a treadmill for 8 minutes, get on the cross trainer for 8 minutes, get on the fucking bike for 8 minutes, do like a circuit of a fucking whatever, a couple of sit-ups, and then leave. People are actually a lot more people, from what I can see, are more willing to test the waters with things that would have been quite niche. Like, I remember when I started PTing, part of the reason I got popular really fast was I was the only trainer where I was that was teaching people how to squat, bench, and deadlift, or anything with a bar. A lot of other trainers like, oh, you know, that stuff's, no, we don't do that. The risk to reward ratio, you know? Like that Instagram video you commented on with that dickhead. I can't remember his name. You know the dickhead?
Yeah, the young lad.
Yeah. Some young
deadlift.
guy fucking posted a video about how deadlifts are too complicated to teach. Their risk-reward ratio is not worth it, and they're shit for growing muscle.
Classic, yeah.
Yeah, you fucking, like fucking hell. How tone deaf in 2024 to post a video like that.
When you say deadlift's too complicated, it just means you don't know how to do it yourself.
Yeah.
That's really as simple as that.
The lad was built like a pepperami though, so... In fairness to him, I said this in it, like, right? He actually was great talker, and the video was edited really well. It's just a shame that the information in it
That's the problem.
was
You
dog
see,
water.
it's the whole cinematography of it, and it's like, oh my god, look at this. This looks professional.
Yeah.
So what he's saying must be true. The same way as people that just join Instagram and find an account with 3 million followers, that must be all very good content because of the amount of people that follow it. Do you know?
And to speak to that point, you actually both brought up about people more willing to call it out. That lad got rinsed in the comments.
Oh, he did. In
Rinsed.
fairness, yeah.
So,
And I am seeing that a lot more now, that, like, somebody will send me a video and be like, this is really stupid, you should talk about it. And then I'll go into the comments and say, well, it seems like people have already done my job, to be honest.
Yeah. I'm not going to add much more than what's
you should still do it, though, just to give us your take.
Yeah.
You know?
But you talk about the squats, actually quite true, because in the gym I'm based in, if I come in the evening to squat or deadlift, like, there could be time, there could be waiting for a platform.
Yeah.
Thankfully, they got in sort of competition style benches as well that you can use the combo racks. But like that, because of the whole sort of intimidation factor of some people coming into the gym, they've just recently put in 2 new squat racks more to the front of the gym, which is away from all the sort of strength area. So those people that are still a bit nervous and are afraid to be seen squatting an empty bar, for example, when someone could be squatting 180 next to them, now have a place to go and build up their confidence before they move down to where the scary people are. Do you know? So yeah, it's definitely, I think you're 100%. I think barbell movements in general are becoming a bit more accepted as not dangerous. Like,
sure, I trained in a hotel gym there a few months ago, and they had a squat rack, and I was like, holy shit. Usually
things have
I was like, it's usually
up.
just like, you know, a set of chrome dumbbells and a Stairmaster or something like that.
Can't beat the chrome dumbbells.
Do you know what, actually? A couple of years, it was actually during COVID, I stayed at the Shearwater Hotel in Ballinasloe.
I know it.
And they have a fucking badass gym in there, man. They've trap bars, they've safety bars, they've like something that is essentially the exact same thing as a powerlifting competition style bench.
Yeah.
They've colored calibrated bumper plates, so they've like the steel calibrate on the inside. I was like, God damn, this gym is kitted out. This is amazing. Like, this is better than some actual gyms I've trained in. So yeah, shout out to the Shearwater Hotel and their badass gym. So that's like, I think, one really cool thing that's come of it. And then incidentally, that also ties into another really good thing, I think. As much as, you know, it can be easy to shit on the TikTok generation and the broccoli heads in the gym, I only recently heard someone giving out because we were in a local gym in Swords called Integrity, and the owner was like, fuck's sake, it was Christmas Eve. He's like, these fucking young lads are in here fucking training on Christmas. Like, go out on the fucking piss, will you? Like, that's the thing. It's like, when he was a teenager, they were all dying in the field with a bag of cans. Whereas these young lads are, I've got to get my fucking squat session in now before the gym's closed for Christmas.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Like,
100%.
I think, especially like you guys would probably have seen this as well, the upswing in fitness culture in Ireland outside of field sports and actually in a gymnasium where we've resistance training, cardio, whatever, has been, I think, fantastic over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think particularly for younger people, like, you know, 16 to 21, the number of them that have embraced training and fitness culture, be it for Instagram or whatever, I still think is a massive net positive, and we're probably going to see the benefits of that in years to come, assuming they all maintain the habit to some degree.
Yeah. It's funny because in the gym I'm in, I just happened to go in one Sunday afternoon, and like the busiest time of that gym is like 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. And ironically, I was thinking, why don't these people all have hangovers? But it's like, because I don't go out drinking, but in my mind, I'm like, that's what people do on Saturday night. They go on the piss and they're dead for Sunday, back to work Monday. Whereas this gym is like wedge at 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. I was like, fucking, this is mental. Like, I didn't, until I walked in, I was like, I wouldn't have believed that. If someone told me you'd be waiting on racks at 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon and go away, I'd be like, nah, never. And now it's like, it is. And I mean, that gym is, I mean, it's 8,000 square foot and you're talking 900 members. So like and I can see even by my own client base, the age group is getting younger and younger and younger because more and more coming into the sport, like, or just generally training.
Which is brilliant.
100%.
We're all delighted with it.
Yeah,
so
totally.
on that positive note, let's swing back towards negativity. So let's talk about a couple of red flags. So Cillian, you and I think we can all speak to coaches, but I definitely want to get your take on some red flags you would want to identify for people and coaches, and Tristan, for you with therapists. Is there anything that comes to mind when you think of red flags in coaches? I know one for me is anything that is, you have to do XYZ before you can do this. So one I saw recently was somebody made a post saying, I can't remember exactly how it was phrased, so I'm going to paraphrase, was you need to earn the right to isolate.
Yes.
So you have to do compound movements before you're allowed to do an isolation. You need to, or like another one I've heard before is, so you need to earn your right to use a barbell.
Yeah.
So you need to do your goblet squat before you can do your barbell squat. That fucks me off so bad.
Yeah.
Is there anything like that you can think of off the top of your head?
Yeah, there's loads. Definitely would agree with that. Particularly when you get the guys who are like, you must earn the right to barbell bench, and then force someone who's overweight and really weak to do fucking grindy half rep push-ups to the floor. It's like, man, the 15 kilo bar would be way easier. But other ones would be like anything that makes the person super reliant on them. So like, I suppose it would be like, you have this asymmetry, only I know how to fix it. You need to come to me for the next 6 weeks for that. But I think one that I've noticed recently that really fucks me off, and I've seen it on Instagram a lot with these guys who've got like the big camera setup with the captions and everything and the clip-on speaker or whatever. It's this framing people's training or nutrition as like, you either do it perfect or don't do it at all. One that really, I've seen a few posts of this now that just boggles my mind is like, criticizing people for eating protein bars and like saying like protein bars are junk food, and you know, like you may as well just be like eating a chocolate bar or something. And it's like, let's stop for a second here and think about the people who are probably watching this video. Like, based on my experience working with general public who are first getting into fitness, I've encountered a lot of people who I would estimate their protein intake is at best 80 grams a day, and a lot of them like 60 grams. 20 grams of protein in the average protein bar. If somebody usually goes into a shop and buys a dairy milk chocolate bar, and I get them to substitute that for like a Fulfill or something like that, I have increased their protein intake by 33%.
Yeah.
And that is 100% going to move them in a positive direction for getting results in the gym, body composition, etc. And you're coming in and telling that person that they may as well not even bother because it wasn't chicken and broccoli and rice. Like, that's the stuff that stops people from getting into fitness at any time other than January, you know, because it's like, why bother starting if I'm not going to do it perfectly? And they have that mindset of like, well, it's just like, do it for 6 weeks with like some crazy nutrition plan and then drop off. And it's like, if you're going to make this a lifelong habit, you need to meet yourself where you're at currently. We'll start with the protein bars, and maybe that'll move to something that's like a Greek yogurt, and then maybe that'll move to like a proper meal at lunchtime, you know?
Yeah. I think that's an excellent point. And I think the problem there is it's somebody looking at something in isolation. Could you say the quality of the protein from a chicken fillet is better than a fulfilled
Absolutely.
bar?
Yeah.
If you're trying to create this fucking hierarchy, for sure. But I suppose the massive benefit to that, like that, if you get somebody to swap their usual lunchtime dairy milk for a fulfill bar, approximately the same calories, this one has 20 grams of protein, so more of those calories are being yielded from protein, blah, blah, blah. We can get into the science of it, but just to push all that to the side for a moment, you are helping this person to understand that, oh, my overall protein intake is important. I should probably pay more attention to that. So even if just by default, somebody's out to eat and they're like, you know what, I want to get something with a bit of extra protein in it because I'm weight training now and because I want to be more accountable with my food. That's a massive net positive.
Yeah.
So if they're even conscious of that, like they're having their breakfast and they're just going to grab a bagel and they think, maybe I should have something protein based on this bagel. You're immediately in, same if we do the same thing with fiber, we're immediately increasing the potential for them having better long-term health outcomes by making them more aware of these things. So I think you're 100% in the right there.
Yeah, it's just trying to get out of this mindset of like everything has to go from 0 to 100 all at once.
Yes.
Whereas like, could we just take the bagel that you usually get with butter on it and put something that's going to be a little bit more protein based on there, like chicken or something like that?
For sure.
We don't have to put you on an entirely new meal plan. We've just started improving one aspect of it.
And I think that's the identifying that the hardest thing for most people when it comes to dieting is their habits and behaviors around food. So rather than trying to make this night and day difference, take what they already do, make as little adjustment to it as possible that puts the trend towards better health outcomes.
Yeah.
And you've started and pretty much doing your job as their coach or trainer. And then let me ask you with that then, Tristan, all right? So in your field, is there anything that sticks out from whether it's physiotherapy? I know we've kind of actually touched off a couple when it comes around the language used, ticking time bomb for Olivia's fucking spine. Is there anything else that stands out to you as a massive red flag when somebody's looking at practitioners to work with?
I suppose labeling movements as safe or dangerous.
Yeah. The red X
Big
and
time.
the tick.
Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
this applies to both realms, is suggesting this is optimal and this isn't. Because again, for the majority of us, doing the same thing over and over again is not doing the same thing over and over again is the problem, not choosing the correct exercise.
Yeah.
And I suppose this can be context dependent, but to stop doing the thing that hurts. Because as I say, if you don't do it, you don't know where you are. So yes, do the thing that hurts, just make it to a tolerable level. That's only somewhat symptomatic. And selling a product for a pain.
Yeah.
Do you know? And then as you mentioned, I think earlier on, another aspect was this is the solution to shoulder pain. If someone has there is no one exercise that's going to solve everyone's pain in any joint in the body. The idea behind is doing what you can, and the more variety you can do, the more chance you have of reducing your symptoms. It really is there is nothing that's going to be detrimental, provided, of course, load management, but that you're assuming that's common sense. Like when I talk about this stuff, I'm assuming you've nailed all the variables that you're in your control. So someone that says, this will fix all your pain, this is dangerous, or this is the optimal way to do this.
Yeah.
Or like, just no, because it's not how the human body works. And what we must remember, what a lot of people don't actually think about on a much deeper level in terms of the body, is that because we're not built on a factory line in the mold, we're not the same as each other. We know that our origins and assertions of our tissues are actually not all the exact same. Yes, they're in the rough sphere of the same part of the shoulder, but like none of us are identical. So none of us generally require the same treatment for the same problem. I can have 10 of you in front of me and you might require 10 different plans. Yes, there might be a common movement in there because there's a common thing I want to load, but 9 times out of 10, everything else is different.
I think sometimes trainers and practitioners can forget like the fundamentals of I'm not saying everything we learn in these courses is 100% up to date, but if we look back at the principles of training, we talk about the SAID principle, SAID, specific adaptations to impose demand. You're going to get better at what you specifically do. So yeah, sure, if somebody's never deadlifted before and they go into the gym and try and pull 200 kilos, that's probably a mistake. Yeah. You mentioned as well with the idea, like you need to earn your right onto the bench press, brother. So if somebody's, so a push-up and a bench press are not the same skill. So of course, there's probably going to be people that can't do push-ups that will be just fine training on the bench press.
So again, this goes, an example I've seen recently is like someone had a video up, I think it was Copenhagen planks, and it was like, if you can't do these, this is what your problem is. It's like, yeah, but what happens if you've never done them before? The body doesn't know how to do it. That's why you'll find the people the first time, and like you probably experience it more than either of us do, but the first time you get someone to do an exercise, the more reps they do, the better it starts to move. Yep. Because the body is figuring out how to do it. Like the body has to figure these things. They word it as like every movement has a map. Which way is the sequence of loading of tissue as you go along. And the more they do it, the more the body gets comfortable and realizes, okay, this is how we do it. And it becomes more proficient as you go along. You don't tell them to do anything. They just keep doing it. And it just naturally gets better as they get used to it. So it's not a case of just because you haven't done something before, you should be an expert at it the first time. Yeah. No one fires a gun and hits the bullseye every single time.
Yeah, unless you're like a freak.
The freak of nature. But there's those people that can just do anything you throw at them. But for the majority of us, it's like, if you haven't done something before, you're not expected to be an expert at it.
Your skill level will be low. That's actually something I'd imagine you've encountered this. So I'll kind of give my experience and let me know if you've experienced the same. Okay. When I start with like a new lifter or a new client, whatever it might be, and they're really like, am I doing this okay? Is this right? And I could be like, no, it's fucking shit, but like you're brand new, like it doesn't matter.
Trust me, you look horrendous right now.
Yeah.
Like don't worry about it.
I had somebody start recently, lovely girl, really has done a bucket load of training, but hasn't done a whole lot of barbell work. And she's really like, if I'm not doing it right, tell me. Yeah. I'm like, listen, your skill right now at this is fucking really low, right? You're not doing it horrendously. Could I pick out 8 things to make this more efficient? Yes. But is me pinpointing these 8 different things for you to now be hypercritical of every time you sit up going to be worth it? Probably not. I just want you to go in and practice the skill. And I always equate this back to when a little kid is learning to ride a bike. You don't, if they fucking wobble and fall off, you don't go, okay, here's where you went wrong, kid. You didn't do this, you didn't do this, you didn't do this. You go, get up and go again. Yeah. Just get up and go again. You'll be fine. Keep going. Just don't cycle out into the road. And that's pretty much our job. We're just going to keep them on the, maybe don't put an extra, fucking 40 kilos on it when you're still learning. Yeah. But, and I think that's I'm sure you've had exactly that experience.
Exactly that experience. It's crazy to me how the less that I tell people, when they're starting off, the sooner they get to doing the thing the way that I would like them to do it. I remember when I first started kind of trying to make a conscious effort, like not to say something to someone unless I really believed that it was causing them an issue or getting in the way of them learning the movement. I really noticed that like it started just like accelerating that process. Whereas if you start off with deciding you're going to give them 4 or 5 bullet points on the deadlift before they've even grabbed the bar, now they're hyper-analyzing lots of stuff about a movement they don't even understand. So yeah, usually I'll obviously get like the big key points. So like say if I'm teaching them a squat, bar is going to go in the middle of your back. We're going to make sure we keep our feet flat on the ground, and we're going to sit down as low as we can. And then I will get people saying like, but like give me more feedback on my technique. And it's like, let's see how you go with like, can we keep getting stronger here? And actually, a lot of things don't really crop up as technique issues until you get to a certain weight. Yeah. So I think actually the deadlift is a really interesting one because a lot of people don't find their natural technique for the deadlift until they get to a certain weight. I remember there was one guy I was coaching who I kind of started him with like a standard sort of like neutral to slightly flexed position. And we actually found when he got up to a kind of around like the 100 kilo plus territory, which is a lot for him because he's like 58 kilos or something. He actually benefited a lot more from rounding his back slightly more. Yep. And he was like, oh, I keep getting pulled into this position. My technique's bad. And I'm like, maybe you're going at that position because that's where you're strongest. Yeah. And we're just going to practice that more. And we wouldn't have figured that out on the first day with the empty bar because it's too easy.
That's what people forget. Your technique changes according to the demands of the load, and that happens over time.
Yeah,
and you will naturally find the efficient. Like you look at James, hasn't James recently deliberately started to flex more?
Yes,
and his deadlifts move better. The only issue with flexion is sometimes it makes your lockout more difficult, depending on how quickly you lock out your knees. But that isn't an injury or anything. That just becomes a slightly efficient thing, and you just got to be cautious not to hitch it. That's the only thing from that point of view. And like I coach a girl in person twice a week, powerlifting coaching, and how often she's like, "I'm surprised you're not critiquing my technique more." I'm like, if I see a problem, I'll say it. It's no problem. You just keep doing what you're doing. I won't let you do something that is detrimental, but I'm also not going to, as you say, overanalyze and make you so conscious that we can't progress because you won't put the intent in because you think something's wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. Just keep going the way you're going. Like we've already PB'd on the lift. She lifted a couple of years ago and took a while out. And we've already PB'd her all-time deadlift. And I haven't once given her a cue. Not once.
Sometimes it's just getting people out of their own way and giving them permission to go.
But as you say, we want to reduce these barriers to entry. We don't want to make things seem such a skill level that no one can do it. Only the elite. Everyone can deadlift. Everyone can squat. Obviously, there's exceptions and physical issues, but in general, everyone can do these things. There's nothing that technical about them until, as you mentioned, you get to this level where it becomes about efficiency because you get into elite level where everything needs to be perfect to get to that 1%. And that's where optimal sort of plays a role in the 1%. The 97% shouldn't even look at that word.
And I'd also I think it's not even a case of like we're ignoring all of these things that we should be working on because it's too much for you right now. I would actually really challenge a lot of the concepts that seem to be really prevalent in a lot of coaching courses and stuff like that about like, this is what a squat is supposed to look like. Because if you actually look at the elite level, there's so much variance in the way that people move and still manage to perform at a super high level. So you kind of have to go back to like, well, where has this information and dogma come from that like people need to squat with their toes pointed straight ahead and the knees need to be perfectly in line? And I think like there's not even a need to try to go down that road with somebody at the start.
But that just shows you the misunderstanding of the human body and the fact that we all have different length bones, different length muscles, different depth sockets. A shallower socket means that people can get a lot more hip flexion than someone with a deeper socket. Simple things like this, but like it's simple. You squat with the way that feels best for you for now. Once it feels good, let's just keep going. If we have to adjust things because it becomes a little bit inefficient, we can. But for now, do what feels good.
Yes.
Because that's all that matters. If it feels good, I can tell you now, I'd nearly put my head on line, your body is quite happy doing it. Because if it didn't feel good, your body would let you know.
Yeah.
There would be pain or aches or something. Your body will let you know it doesn't like that. It's not just this thing that all of a sudden just breaks.
Yeah.
You will find symptoms way before it becomes a problem. It feels good, fucking keep going that way until it doesn't feel good. Then you can have a look at things.
I think there is this presumption, and I think a lot of coaches can fall into this trap that good technique or good execution or good form, whatever you want to call it, equates to how pretty the lift is. That looks
Aesthetics.
good. That's an aesthetic lift. That looks, your knees were stacked over your toes, which are stacked under your hips when your chest was really upright in your squat. I actually encountered this recently. One of my lifters was told by another lifter who isn't a coach, who isn't lifting that long, you need to squat with your chest more upright when you're going into your squat. The difference anatomically between these two lifters, the one lifter who squats with her chest really upright, has really short femurs, really long torso, tends to just sit up and down.
Bar's probably higher up in the back as well.
Exactly. Versus the other lifter, very, very low bar, short torso, very long femurs, needs to bend over more to hit depth. It's just the way she squats. And I had to explain this to her. I was like, they don't have to look the same.
Send a video of Dave Richardson.
Man, tell me about it. What a great squat. See, I love using him as an example because obviously he's a monster. So Dave Richardson's a powerlifter.
Yeah.
He's an absolute animal, a clinical lifter, absolutely executes perfectly on game day. But he has a really, really strong back. He pulls over 400 kilos for reps. He's an
412 for 3 last week.
412 for 3.
Does he lean forward a lot when he squats?
Yes.
Yeah. But the poor bastard just has such a range of motion.
Yeah.
Like he has to get to that point.
Yeah.
He has to fold in half because that's the only way he can get down. But that is his efficient lift.
But I love the way he does it
him, like.
because he goes down, and he leans a little before it sits into depth
and then the
just
knees
pops
pop.
back out.
He's nailed that.
Yeah.
Because if he didn't, he wouldn't be lifting that weight.
Yeah.
I don't care what you say. If that wasn't efficient, he wouldn't have that load in his back.
Yeah, and then actually that ties into the next thing I want to bring up. And I won't keep us here a whole pile longer because I know
Whatever.
I know Dan has work he needs to do, but I want to. I do want to bring this up because this is something that I think pops up and where we see a lot of this information come from. There's people that come into both of these fields, whether it's dealing with people in the clinic or dealing with people in the gym, and there is this presumption of authority. I have the paper. I can say what I want, or I've read the paper. I've read PubMed, whatever. I've read the research. That makes me an authority on this topic. And a lot of the time it can be that, a brand new PT who fucking doesn't know their arse from their elbow, fucking still calls it a medial delta, you know what I mean? These people, there's this presumption that, well, I'm in this position, therefore I know exactly what I'm talking about. We mentioned in the pre-chat, we mentioned Jay Farrant, probably the least qualified strength coach in the country.
On paper, yeah.
On paper, right? But his results, as Cillian very rightly pointed out, the results speak for themselves. He's produced some of the greatest powerlifters Ireland's ever seen. He's taken, Jake Brennan came to him with a lot of promise and then got him to 1,000 kilo total, which very few people in the world can even say they've done. Mm-hmm. So again, I think it's come up before. It's that idea of eminence versus evidence versus applicable knowledge. So somebody, for example, like TJ, you work with people every day in a clinic. So I would trust your understanding of the pain experience far more than somebody who's read a textbook. Cillian works with the general population every day and has taken somebody from the inability to move very well at all to having them squatting, deadlifting, pressing very comfortably after a lifetime of not any really serious strength training or physical activity. So I would trust your opinions in those realms much greater. Where do you think this presumption of, well, I'm the authority figure here, I'm going to say this, where do you think this stems from? Do you think it's echoing what they've heard online? Do you think they did a course?
Well, this is the issue, is it's very hard to figure out where the source comes from, because it does often come down to, again, I think some people have fallen into this trap of, if we talk about Instagram again, the amount of followers someone has. But I think comes a point where if you look at the client base that people have worked with, you start to figure out that what these people are qualified in doesn't necessarily matter if all the results they have shown that it works.
Yeah.
And that might be contradictory in some situations, but like my original qualification, I think, is the biggest load of shite ever. And in fact, you'll know Adam from Odyssey has the same one. He'll be the same thing. The only good thing about that course was the origin insertion section of it, of anatomy. That was a good part of it. The rest of it was bullshit. Now at the same time, yes, it taught me how to be a good masseuse, but at the same time, that's not exactly the most skilled thing in the world either. Once you know where everything is, you kind of know what you're rubbing, to some degree.
It's a great line.
But it's the amount of people I've worked with, the bodies I've got my hands on, the people I've had the fortune of working with, and the mentorships I've done, the further courses and stuff I've done like that have really shown me how much variety there is in this field and how much bullshit there is, but how much fucking class information there is. And for some people, completely free. But because I don't have 5 million followers, or to some degree, I can't deadlift 400 kgs, thank God that's starting to dissipate a lot more, because now I'm working with literally some of the strongest people in the world. Whereas a year ago, people were saying, I was getting the pushback that, but sure, you can't squat triple body weights. What do you know about my squat? Okay. Like I can't,
tissue.
do you know, I can't, I don't even try to fight that back. I'm like, cool, that's fine. I'm in a good position where I don't go looking for business. I don't beg for it either. If you want to work with me, that's fine. If you don't like how I work, that's also fine. I'm sure there's someone else that'll work well for you. But if you want someone that's going to keep making you do the thing you do, and the number one goal is get you back doing the thing you want to do to the best level, then I can help you. If you want someone that's only going to do the things the way you like them to done or what you believe in, I'm not that person for you. Do you know? And I'm just fortunate in a position where I can now just say, look, go to someone else. It doesn't bother me. I'm tired of trying to please people and satisfy people and give them what they want to hear. I'll tell you the truth. I don't sugarcoat anything. You can tell some lifters, I'd be like, there's nothing wrong with you. Fucking man up. It's a little bit of pain. You're not broken. Keep going. Yeah. Like, I don't do the whole, oh, you poor little pet. I don't believe in mollycoddling people. We're not that fragile. As you said, like the anti-fragile, we're not that fragile. We don't break that easily. Doing the thing that hurts is not going to make you worse, provided it's done under supervision.
For sure. I actually give you as a prime example. I do want to get Cillian's take as well, but I'll give you the example that comes to mind for me. So I'm not going to like throw somebody under the bus, name names, but I met a trainer before who master's degree. So, very, very high skill level, right? And working in the same gym as me, doing the same providing the same services, but he would bring people through the FMS, right? And his whole buzz, and I was like, this is literally the charlatan's playbook. He'll put them through the FMS, give them their score, and then sell them an 8-week plan to rescreen them in 8 weeks to improve their score in the FMS. So, their entire 8 weeks training was improving their hurdle step. You know what I mean? It had nothing to do with what they came to the gym to get. Like, I want to get I have a wedding in fucking 3 months. I don't want to look like a fucking badly made bed. You know what I mean? I don't want to have a fucking body like a sack of spuds. And here I am fucking stepping over a hurdle with a dowel, 3 days a week to improve a score at this test that I didn't even know existed before I came in here. And it was this idea. And I remember, but this is many moons ago, I quizzed it. I was like, do you not think you're, like, if somebody's coming to you for this and you're selling them this, do you not think there's a bit of a crossed wires thing here where somebody's come to you for a service that you're not able to provide and you're selling them something they didn't ask for? And he's like, I have a master's degree.
Just, don't waste too much time, but just going back to the opposite, Rian McKeever.
Mm-hmm.
Rian's had 2 clients came to recently, and I didn't sign them up because one of them, I was like, you're just bruised. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Like, it's something I can do for you. The other one was, started getting a little bit of hip pain right in the middle of exams, coming to the end of a block. And I was like, do you know what? When your exams finish, she was like, they finished yesterday. I was like, cool. Keep going the way you're going for another week or 2. Come back to me if the pain doesn't go away.
Yeah.
What happened? The pain went away. Why? Because you were stressed to the fucking hills, still pushing to the end of a block. It's map his.
He's a phenomenal lifter.
Exactly. And I was like, there's probably nothing wrong with him. It's just highly stressed, just needs to chill out. Exams are finished now. And what happened? He messaged me about 10 days later, TJ, the pain's pretty much gone.
Yeah.
There we go. Like, I could have milked that and I could have said, but the problem is, in that situation, I've become fairly popular in that realm that if I go screwing people over, it'll bite me in the ass.
Yeah. You've said it before as well that, like, you don't book people in for multiple sessions because what if I give you enough information in session 1 that I never need to see you again?
So if you come into me in the clinic, you have 2 weeks, you do what I told you. After 2 weeks, you text me and let me know how you're getting on, and we'll both decide whether you need to come back in again or not.
Yeah,
I just don't. Now, from revenue point of view, as I say to people, I need fresh blood all the time. That's the hardest part about my business. Is I need new people, or people that were with me before and have now have an injury and come back to me.
Yeah.
But it's not like coaching where I have you.
Yeah. If you're doing your job, they're going away.
Do you know, that's the problem. It's a good thing because my aim is to not have people dragged on.
Yeah. I think it's probably a slower burn, but I think by having that degree of integrity, like, I trust you.
Yeah.
I will refer lifters to you anytime there's an issue that I'm not qualified to deal with, I don't have the knowledge to deal with, or maybe the lifter doesn't see me. They see me as their strength coach or their powerlifting coach. They don't see me as the pain specialist. So I'm going to send them to the guy that they can have that separate relationship with.
But the funny thing is, yesterday I turned off the appointment for booking calls because I think I have 12 or 15 people waiting now to ring. I just don't have the time to ring at the moment.
Yeah.
So that's just new. That's new. That's all referral, and that's a great thing. But there's a point where people are just gonna have to wait or go somewhere else. I just can't. I can't sacrifice.
It's a good problem to have.
It is, but it's only recently, and it is getting like that. But it's taken me since COVID to get to this point.
But like that ties into what, like, my answer to that question you're asking about, like, this thing that exists where we have people who seemingly are really qualified and ones who seemingly on paper aren't all that qualified, and it doesn't necessarily match up with the skill level and coaching or how good they actually are. And I thankfully, like, as we were talking about through social media, have managed to connect with people who I think are really, really good practitioners. And I've thought about it a lot myself because there really isn't a great correlation between, like, what level of advancement in terms of, like, degrees they have and how good they are. The only thing that I can see that's a unifying factor, and what you were both talking about there speaks to that, is they just really, really give a shit.
Yeah.
About helping people. Mm-hmm. And, like, that is the main thing that they want. Obviously, you have to marry with that with being able to actually exist and make a living. And that's usually the thing that people who really give a shit about would struggle with, because it's much easier to bullshit people and give out the narratives that sell well and that they actually most of the time want to hear. They usually don't want to hear that, like, you you just need to reduce the weight and you don't have to do any breathing drills or whatever. But I think that even if you haven't done an advanced degree or been through a formalized education process where maybe you would have got exposed to certain ideas, if you really care about helping people, you reflect on what you're doing often enough and go and find that information, because it is out there. Like that's how I came to the whole like movement optimism thing, is like I was taught the FMS thing in college, and I was, operating under this thing of like good and bad exercises. And I just had enough experiences that I was like, this isn't working. Like it's not, the stuff that I've learned is not matching up with what I'm seeing in the real world. And then you go away and question those ideas. Whereas if you don't really give that much of a shift, then you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
And like I delete videos from my library and replace them all the time. Because I'm like, actually, you know what? I don't think that actually, I think I used that before and it was just pure fucking dumb luck. When I do that now, I don't think it's doing what I think it's doing. And I come up with another one. I might see someone else do, because obviously not all my videos are my own. Like there's very few things I'm going to come up with. I take a standard exercise, I might just deviate slightly to make someone load in a different position. But I'm not creating an exercise. I'm just modifying someone else's.
Yeah.
You know, and no more than you don't prescribe a poor squat because you came up with it.
Yeah.
Someone else did, but you see the value in that for that lifter to work with.
For sure. It's our job is really to find the application of what is suitable to that individual in that exact moment for what their needs particularly are. And I think we're going to leave it there. We're just about out of time. I think we got through 3 of the 10 points I put up. So good chat, boys.
That's a good sign. That's a good sign.
100%. We'll have to do a part 2 of all 3 of us together again.
Sure.
100%. Because I think there's so much more ground we can cover. And I think you both, because you are both singing from the same hymn sheet, but coming from 2 obviously very different sides of the same track. You know what I mean? Yeah, you're both singing from the same hymn sheet, both part of the same choir, both have the best interest of your clients, athletes, and patients at heart. So we'll leave it there, boys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.